Why is it you can get that incredible support from overseas, but you can't get support from Australia?
Personally, I would love to see some industry standards where they force directors to make declarations around what recovery rates they're achieving or something like that, where we actually have to stand behind the claims that we're making.
How much of the panels actually getting recycled?
Now we're at 98%, and the 2% is essentially the plastics from the solar panel.
The waste that we produce is insane.
It's only fair that we're transparent and open with how it all works and what happens and where does it go, etc.
G'day guys, welcome back to another episode of Level Up. We have another cracking podcast for you today. This one actually really excites me and I'm really keen to see where this conversation goes and what I learned from it, because this is a topic that has been on my radar for a long time. I'm very passionate about sustainability, reducing the building waste from the environment and putting landfill in big holes in the ground and all that sort of stuff. And I actually come across our guest today from some posts. I always get his name right. I think it's Joost Bakker. Anthony might be able to correct me if I'm saying it wrong, but
You've done well, mate.
he posted a post about the guest we have on today, and I was all in. And I've since been following them flat out and had a few conversations, and I really love what they're doing. So, big warm welcome to Anthony from Lotus Energy. How are you, mate?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me on, Duayne.
So, just to give the listeners a little bit of background, the reason I've reached out to Anthony is Anthony is doing incredible. Anthony, I think it's your old man. Is it your son as well? There's 3 generations.
Yeah, great granddad and different businesses over the journey, but all Sparkies. So
yeah. These guys are doing. You're going to learn a lot today from this podcast. Like, these guys are doing world first things when it comes to solar panels and recycling them. So, Anthony, can you give us a little bit of background, mate? How you got into what you're doing now?
Yeah, I'll try and give you the reasonably quick version, Duayne, to not bore the listeners. But essentially, I started installing solar in 1991 with my dad. I was only like 17 years of age. And from there, we'll quickly fast forward, but essentially we installed a lot of solar panels over the journey. And in around 2018, we were, organizing to recycle some solar panels, and we came across a company in South Australia who claimed to be recycling. And probably like a lot of us, we take things on face value, and we thought, all right, that sounds good. All the information on the website read really well, sustainability and responsible management of waste and circular economy, and all the buzzwords were there. So we went ahead with that, but then we subsequently discovered that they weren't actually doing the things that they were claiming they were doing.
How did you find out? Like, did you visit them, or like what?
Well, I have a tendency to be a bit of a serial pest, Duayne, and you're running a big company, or if you want something done, you have to continually follow it up. And I'd engaged with them, and they offered for us to visit. In actual fact, initially, and very coy about visiting, and there's lots of excuses why we couldn't visit, etc. And we ended up finding out. They ended up admitting that they weren't doing what they were claiming to be doing. And I actually offered to potentially even invest in them. And I flew over to South Australia, and the gentleman who headed up that business was literally a no-show. So I'd flown from Melbourne to Adelaide, turned up at his office, and he wasn't even there. Couldn't even give the courtesy of turning up. So it was fair to say it was a bit of a red rag to a bull. And not only did we take him to court over his situation, but also we went and developed the entire process.
Yeah. So I guess to jump in a little bit deeper, so you're like, I feel the same, mate. Like, so many of the like, we're now recycling a lot of our own products on our building. We've just recently finished our first completely hand demolished full home. All the concrete went to the concrete recyclers, all the bricks went to the concrete recyclers. We ended up getting over 12 ton of hardwood out that is going to be reused in other projects. We recycled all the glass and aluminium. So when I saw what you guys are doing with the solar panels, it really sparked an interest, because solar panels are something that I've, over a long period of time, I've almost got to a point where I was talking clients out of having them, because I didn't like the materials that were getting used to make them. But my biggest concern was how they were getting recycled at their end use. And you guys have now solved that. And like, correct me if I'm wrong, but like you're leading the world in this technology, aren't you?
Absolutely. We started with a very, what I'd say basic process, which, wasn't exactly cutting edge. I called it the T model Ford production line, where we managed to recover the glass and the aluminium and the copper, which by weight is quite a bit, but you're right in saying like solar panels have, a number of things like embedded in them that are quite problematic. So the moment it's broken, those heavy metals are exposed to the environment, they can cause some leaching problems. But yeah, now we've got it really at a quite high level science, from a science and chemistry point of view, where we're recovering the nano-silicon and the silver out of the solar panels. And we're currently moving to a new facility, which has got a 700 square meter laboratory, which is managed quite literally by scientists.
That's unbelievable, mate. Well, you were just, before we started recording, you were saying, what's the percentage of silver that solar uses?
Oh, well, globally, the solar industry uses about 40% of the mining production. And for the last 3 years running, there's been a massive shortfall of silver. And that's purely because of the solar industry itself. So sure, it's been fantastic, for renewable energy and everything like that, solar panel pays for itself in energy terms and carbon footprint in about 2 years. But its unintended consequences are there's certain commodities in that are now, facing a massive shortfall. And you only have to look at the charts of silver in the last few years to see it. But essentially a solar panel has about 0.2% or even less by weight of silver. But that silver makes up 50% of the manufacturing cost, just under actually. But yeah, so a really important piece to the story is that we had to get that silver out and get it back to the solar industry.
Yeah. So like, what sparked your interest to do, like, basically set up a whole new business around recycling this? Like I'm assuming your installation business was quite large.
Yeah, and like we've worked all over the world. I guess, for many years, I got the same objection and, from perhaps what, the concerns you had around, well, they can't really be recycled and are they all that, environmentally friendly? And I regularly had a throwaway line about, well, we could send a man to the moon, but, so surely we can recycle a solar panel. And nowadays, it's probably not the best reference because there's some questions around that as well. But that was the throwaway line. And I guess, once I discovered that this other company was doing the wrong thing, it dawned on me how important it was for the industry and how damaging it could be if that information came out publicly, that, the only purported recycler around was basically, fair to say, scamming their customers. So, we took to developing it. And, if there was one good thing out of COVID, for us at least, was we were in lockdown in Melbourne and we managed to buy a bunch of machinery from some companies that I guess maybe panicked a little bit for business reasons around, that time. And we bought up that machinery and did all the testing and we're quite fortunate to get it up and running quite quickly.
That's awesome. So for people, like, because you see it all the time now, like we even do it on renovations. Like there'll be solar on the existing roof and it'll be worn out and old. So the sparky will say, hey, look, this system's garbage. It's not up to new code, like needs to go. Where, like, and so I've asked the question before, they always tell me they're taking it to a recycling plant. Where is it going?
Well, depending on where you're talking about in Australia, most probably it's been sent off to a yard, bundled into a shipping container with a secondhand car, falsely purported as just secondhand vehicles in the container. It's shipped to Nigeria in Africa, where they either sell them in markets, or if they can't recover, or get them working still, they're burnt in fields.
What?
Yeah. So it's actually an environmental disaster. It's listed as one of the top 10 environmental disasters in the world. And sadly, our industry turns a blind eye to it, or pretends it's actually a good thing because it's solar for communities and people who can't afford it. They're literally sending it off. It's not tested. It's not safe. Or we couldn't certify that it's safe. We're not happy to have it on our own roof, but we'll send it to someone else in Africa for $10.
Yeah. It's something that I'm really passionate about. And I guess it's hard. Like we all try and do our best, but like sustainability is obviously thrown around a lot now, especially in the building industry. And there's a lot of builders out there that are trying to do the right thing and wanting to do the right thing. But like, I'm always that person that wants to look into it further. Like, all right, well, where's it going? Like you did with the plant that you were saying to, but I've never done it with the solar. Like, I've done it a lot with the timber and the concrete. Like, I know how that gets managed. But to be honest, I just thought electrical waste, like you put it in the e-bins and we take it to our scrappies and they separate it. And I thought, well, it's got to be getting dealt with correctly. But after hearing your stats and some of the conversations we've had about how you're leading the way in the world, and it's obviously not happening the way we think it's happening.
No, and solar's not alone, and e-waste for that matter as well. That there's so many things that are just completely wrong. And you coming from the building industry, obviously, Duayne, mate, you've got a whole heap of local, state, federal, like building codes and laws and safety requirements that you have to adhere to. The safety requirements still exist for the recycling industry, but there are no standards, and I mean none. There's things that they purport that they're going to crack down on, if it's classified as a hazardous waste. I've seen it firsthand. I've reported things to EPAs around the country. I won't name particular states or anything, but no one seems to care. They're more interested in, winning a grant from the government than they are about, calling out the truth of what's really going on. And, recently up in Queensland, only a week or two ago, there was an article in from the ABC online, and I think it was Jasmine Hines published the article about a company, Solar Recovery Corporation. They're now saying that they're going to be up and running in, I think, March or May 2026. They did a press release in, I'll say, February 2022, saying they'll be up and running in a month or two. They've been bundling up solar panels and sending them offshore for years.
Well,
and, industry bodies are holding conferences and getting these people to talk about recycling and the wonderful things they're doing.
Yeah.
It's quite a farce, mate.
It seems to be, it happens a lot, especially in the building industry. And like you say, there's so many companies out there that are just ticking boxes to get these grants. But if people actually dig deeper, they're not following through on things. But like I imagine, mate, with what you're doing, you're getting support from the government.
Not at all. It's not one little bit, mate. We did win one grant from Sustainability Victoria, which actually ironically related to avoiding solar panels going to recycling. So, and that was around developing a testing procedure for, reuse and repurpose of solar panels, which we still think is a great idea. And we developed that in collaboration with Victoria University and Taurus Group Electrical. And there was a second part to it, which was a safe handling and decommissioning of solar panels, which we developed a training course with the Solar Training Centre. So we got support from Sustainability Vic for that. But, as I say, the irony was that was to avoid recycling. Clearly, we've got too many solar panels, if we want to avoid it. But Yeah, like in reality, the best support we've had thus far is actually from international government. So we've been recognized for, the world leading standards that we've achieved. And we've got a facility that we've got in planning, and we've already signed off an agreement for Germany. And I head off this weekend back to Germany. And we've already signed off on the first of 3 sites for India as well. And like both countries have given amazing support financially and other ways in terms of, setting up and, employment and HR and training and, planning and all the different aspects.
Why is
And,
it you
and
can get that incredible support from overseas, but you can't get support from Australia?
no, well, mate, it's, there, there's a big difference, as we know, there's a big difference between what politicians say on television or radio or any form of media versus the reality. And, it's fair to say I'm fairly disgruntled with it all. We're in Victoria, in Thomastown, we sit in the electorate of the Minister of Environment, Lily D'Ambrosio. We've invited her out numerous times, zero interest in coming. She did a public announcement how the state government was investing $10 million into, I think, what they called the Circular PV Challenge for anyone that could recycle solar panels. Now, bear in mind, we're probably less than 5 kilometers from her office. They made that statement about what they were doing. They never gave out any money to anyone, us included in that story. And the day before the election, we were asked to put on a display for her and Daniel Andrews. And despite my feelings in regards to that, we did it because I thought it could be positive, create some awareness and everything. That was on the Friday before the election. We did all that, and they made all these amazing statements about how they were supporting us and what they were going to do and everything. And we never heard from them again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. And mainly, I guess that's another reason I wanted to get you on the podcast, because look, my belief is that unless there's individuals out there that are spreading their passion about what they do and highlighting what actually happens in real life, especially in the construction industry, like politicians have no idea whatsoever about how our industry works. We've got to share our stories and tell what happens on a day-to-day basis in this industry. And I guess it's hats off to you, mate, for continually pushing forward and getting it to where you have now. Like, that's a massive undertaking, I'm sure, for you financially, bloody, in all ways, to get it to the point where it's at now.
Thanks, Duayne. I'd say it's probably easier than what you've done, though, dismantling an entire house and trying to find a home for all of the various components. That's a super challenge. Like, a lot of respect, hearing that you've done that, because I wouldn't know where to start with half of those products that come through.
Yeah.
We recently dismantled a small solar farm in terms of, today's standards, but of course, it was old, it was at end of life and everything. So it was 600 kilowatts, about 2,500 solar panels. And we organized for all the concrete pads to be recycled. So they were all moved out. I think it was like 600 ton of concrete. There was about 60 ton of steel from all the structural frames and everything. About 6 ton of aluminium, about 4 ton of copper cable, which is very nice. Of course, you're not in the construction industry if you don't know the value of copper. and of course, all the e-waste from it had what they call string inverters. So smaller inverters, breaking the system up into, I think they were 60 10 kilowatt systems effectively, and then of course all the solar panels. So we managed to organize for every single piece of that to be recycled, and obviously there's different recovery rates in all the different pieces there. But we were really proud of how we managed that, and there was a lot of learning for us as well. Dealing with the client, it was the first time we'd dismantled a solar farm. But yeah, it's fantastic, that it's happening now.
Yeah, it's awesome. So can we talk about some numbers? So like on average, what's the lifespan of a solar panel?
Yeah, it's a broad question, right? Like, if I said the solar panels that I started installing as a young bloke, they were BP solar panels. We get those coming in and they're 30, so 25 to say 35 years old. They're still working like the day they were made. They've hardly had any degradation at all, which is quite incredible. Uh, Obviously, as we, mass produce things and we try and refine it and of course push costs down as well substantially. Uh, Now, depending on brand, as short as 7 years. Uh, and but pretty regularly, I'd say 10 to 25 years is probably the more realistic band where they would sit. There is still a lot that get decommissioned prematurely, though. Like what you were saying, you're doing an extension or you know, uh, say knocking over a building and a rebuild or something. That the solar system's fine, but if you're going to remove it, the moment you remove it, then you have to meet the current standards,
Yeah.
and you can't reinstall it anyhow. So there's a lot of that happening. There's a lot of the electric vehicle and battery, combination or even singular, that people get an electric vehicle. They, of course, want to charge their car, off their own solar asset. They realize that it's probably too small what they installed several years ago to service their house and the car. So they then install a battery, make the solar system a lot larger, probably max out their roof. And for aesthetic reasons, us Aussies, we act like we're really laid back, but, we're still a bit superficial. So we have a tendency to not want two different looking systems on the roof. So we remove the old one and put a nice new big one in.
Yeah.
And
Look, I say every day in this industry is a learning day. It's a school day, and we've got a huge refurb job we're doing at the moment, and the clients actually only put the existing system on the house. They tell us about 4 to 5 years ago that because of the refurb and the extension work we're doing, that section of roof has to be replaced, so that we had to remove the solar system. And so honestly, I just thought it was a simple get the solar company out, take it off. So when I've quoted the job, I've rung our solar installer up and he's going, oh yeah, it's this per panel to remove and it's this per panel to reinstall. And so that's what I put in my proposal. And then we've got the job, we're underway, and they've come out to remove the panels. And they're like, oh shit, Duayne, this is there's going to be extra costs here. We can put these back on, but the fixing clips need to be upgraded. They don't meet code anymore. The electrical fixings don't meet code anymore. And
yep,
I'm like, well, mate, it's got to be up to code. So give me a price to reinstall it the way it has to be. And the cost to reinstall it the way it has to be is half the cost of a new system. So we've then gone to the client and explained to them what's happened. And they're like, oh, well, shit, like for that amount of money again, we would rather have a brand new system. And I'm
yep,
like, come on, guys, like seriously, it's not that old and it still works. Like, let's just work with it.
yep,
But exactly like you said, us Aussies, as much as we say we're laid back, we want everything looking nice and shiny and matching and new. And mate, this is on a roof that it's on a 3-story house that no one can see it from any direction.
yep.
Uh, but like back to the numbers, like out of a solar panel, like what's the actual data? Like what are you getting out of a panel? Like how much of the panel is actually getting recycled?
Sure. So now we're at 98%. And the 2% is essentially the plastics from the solar panel. There's a back sheet and a plastic junction box and a bit of cable sheath and an encapsulate, which is the piece that the cells themselves sit in. The heavy piece to the whole story is the glass. So that's 75, 80% of the weight. The aluminium is, it ranges, of course, but, say 10 to 15%. We recover all that. We recover the copper cable off the back and get the copper out. Probably the real, I guess, intriguing piece and the part of the puzzle that we'd always had our mindset on achieving was getting the solar cells out of the solar panel themselves. And so when you look at a solar panel, you'll see they're normally blue or black typically. And as a general rule, it's means that they're polycrystalline or monocrystalline. There's lots of other sorts as well, but they're the most common. And those solar cells, they sometimes call them a wafer. It's incredibly thin silicon metal. And this is why you should never walk on a solar panel. Because if you ever see someone walk on them, Duayne, on one of the sites, they're not doing a good thing. They're definitely damaging the solar panel. They get what they call micro cracks. So they're incredibly fragile. They have very low tolerance to any like flexation, and they will shatter. So if you can imagine, we've got to somehow manage that solar panel, work out how to get this big, call it sticker, the EVA backsheet off, and then it's in and encapsulate, and get the cell out and try and maintain that piece with, it's fine to break it, but minimally. And then from that piece of silicon metal, it's got a whole bunch of other typically metals that they've layered on it. Well, they call it doping to create the positive or negative charge to get the electricity to flow through. And then they're really fine looking tiny little lines on it, not the bigger ones. They're silver. And so from that point where we worked out how to get the cells out, we then worked out how to clean the silicon cell down and get all the other different pieces off, silicon nitride and chromium and boron and a bit of lead. There's some aluminium embedded in some of them as well, and get all of those things out and have a pure silicon. And then we've created a process on how to break down that silicon metal down into what's called a nano-silicon. And nano-silicon is like the holy grail of electric vehicle and all sorts of batteries for that matter. It's also used in military applications, in biomedicines, in agriculture, and in the silicon chip. So nano-silicon is incredibly important from a national security perspective. And we're now producing that, which is just awesome.
Mate, like I just learned a hell of a lot in the last 5 minutes. Like that's, I never thought a solar panel could be so interesting. But so like, how is the process itself safe? Like, do you have to introduce more chemicals that make all this happen, or is it a safe process?
Well, we would have done it a lot quicker had we have used chemicals and just skipped a whole heap of R&D that we've been doing. So we managed to do it with naturally occurring acids, which means that our waste, quite literally, being alkaline or acid based, we can actually neutralize it and it can be washed down the drain legally and everything from an EPA perspective. And I'm happy for you to publish this part. We could have used a hydrofluoric acid or a hydrochloric acid. Hydrofluoric's like really nasty, really dangerous stuff. And it would have quite simply cleaned down, but then we would have created a whole heap of other byproducts like chemicals that we would have had to dealt with. And, for us being a renewable energy related business, it was just counterintuitive to say,
Yeah.
oh, great, we've fix one problem and create another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like what's the outcome of this? Like obviously it's incredible that you're doing this and it's happening and they're getting recycled. What's what happens with all the materials that you're getting out of this?
So at the moment, see the nano-silicon, we've got a company overseas that's been utilizing it from us. So they're a publicly listed company, Neo Battery Materials. So it's getting used to make battery anodes. And like to put it in perspective, we're making that nano-silicon at 50 nanometers, which is 51 millionths of a millimeter. Like, so the particles are incredibly small, and those particles enhance batteries unbelievably. Like, so we've already done several trials ourselves, and we've produced batteries that are working at 10 to 12 times density. And what that means is that say the electric vehicle world, because a lot of people talk about drive range stress, and they don't drive far enough just yet for them to perhaps, purchase one. It will take a, typical 500 kilometer drive range vehicle and make it somewhere between 5 and 6,000 kilometers. Yeah. Yeah. And this tech's already working. It's not like it's, science fiction and it's got a whole heap of problems like, some other things that get purported out in the marketplace. This thing actually is already working.
It's the sort of stuff. Look, I'm definitely not a fan of the electric vehicles, but that's something that would change my mind, because like if you're getting that sort of range out of the vehicle, it completely changes all the environmental stuff that comes with that vehicle. So
yeah, and you can massively reduce because the size of the battery, which means a lot less cobalt, a lot less lithium, a lot less copper. Because obviously we don't need a 5,000-6,000 kilometer drive range. So only heavy transport would perhaps be interested in that. But 2,000-3,000 kilometers, like if you could drive, say, from Sydney to Melbourne or Sydney to Brisbane or something like that, that's substantial. It's or maybe do 4,000 k's and drive Melbourne to Perth.
wow.
It's that's definitely a game changer for the industry. And of course, that same battery could be applied to a power network or a laptop for that matter as well. And
yeah, that's insane. But you guys are doing, I saw on your, like I've seen on your socials, you're coming up with some pretty creative ways, aren't you? You're making, I saw one of your things that I was really interested in, some of the byproduct you're using to go into render or something, eh?
Yeah, that one's sort of a funny story, because we are, we're getting all this glass coming out of the solar panels, and we're trying to come up with lots of different applications for it, because the volumes are just, ridiculous to manage. And, the perfect world, the glass goes back to making more glass for solar panels. And, it's a high purity glass, for obvious reasons. It has to be nice and clear and, for the light to go through and not diffract. And, but, some of it, through the process are already broken. So they may already have some sort of level of contamination in them. So we're looking at, we made fire rated tiles to go behind batteries, and tabletops, and tilt mount ballast systems for solar. And this render product. So we had this glass, like so it's silicon dioxide glass. And so it's essentially a sand. And but it was coming out really fine, like around 20 microns, which is like talcum powder. Just for the listeners, like you can literally, rub this stuff on your face and your skin will feel smoother, not cut you like you imagine with glass. And I had a guy that, told us he was doing some teaching around rendering products, and could he perhaps, take some, just as some samples and do some trials, etc. And he was, teaching at a TAFE out of Melbourne. And of course, we're quite happy to find another home for the products, and sent it off to him. He in actual fact, I followed him up and said, how was it going? And I thought, he was going to explain to me how he'd done, some walls at the TAFE, and the students were, playing around with it and doing different, trials with it. He sends me some photos of some heritage buildings that they've been repairing with it. And he repairs buildings for various national trusts around the country. And he told me it's the best render product he's ever experienced. And he's now teaching everyone to use this product, which at the time was hilarious, because we didn't even have it commercially available. It was just something we kept, gifting to him, and for the purpose of the trials and doing the R&D. So those photos are literally heritage buildings in Melbourne that I think you've seen on our socials.
Oh man, there's little things, like they're the sort of little things that catch my eye. Like not only you recycling the product, but it's getting repurposed in heritage buildings, which is like saving history, really. Like
yeah. Well, one of the most important things for us was to not just recycle it, but make sure that the products get utilized locally where we can. And So we can't for everything. But that said, we're not a company that will give up because we've had, one or two no's. We keep looking for other solutions, but the glass locally, we've been able to get a home for all of it. The big challenge has been the metals. So Australia has lost a lot of its manufacturing capabilities, of course, to China, as we know, and other countries. But the metal industry is a really odd one because Australia is the home to what I believe to be the greatest resources on Earth. I think we've got every single commodity known to man. We dig it up out of the ground in bauxite or ores or whatever, and very little processing happens here. We send it offshore and we buy it back in the form of a manufactured product. We're encouraging businesses to engage with us and look to find ways to utilize the products here. But yeah, at present, the metals end up in offshore, India, China, Singapore, Japan, South Korea.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? Like Australia really needs to wake up to itself with all that stuff. Like there's going to come a point in history where we're going to need the resources we've had, and there won't be enough left to do what we need to do.
Absolutely. Like case in point, as I was saying earlier, silver. Like there's a global shortage of it. So the best thing we can do is mine the resources we've already got at hand, which is our waste. So, heard this reference urban mining, which I think is really cool, of mining the materials that we've got at hand.
Yeah. Back to the rendered product, is that a product that you're potentially going to be releasing or selling, or is it just something that's a bit of a trial and error type thing?
Well, it's something that we're keen on actually engaging with a company that perhaps already makes render. We don't want to be everything to, everyone. And we're quite happily to, find a home for it. At present, we've been producing it, ourselves but we would love to see it, off in, with a company locally in Australia using that as a manufactured product.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, like I said at the beginning, mate, like I first saw you on a post that Joost Bakker did, and so I'm assuming that was a pretty good experience to, like, I love what he's doing and how he's thinking outside the box and just coming up with some incredible ways to change the building industry. So I imagine for you that would have been pretty exciting to get him involved.
Oh, absolutely, mate. He's quite an inspiration, and for full disclosure, he's a good friend as well. And but what I love about Joost is he will only promote something that he truly believes in and he's passionate about. He doesn't do it because he's getting paid by those people or anything like that. He does it because, it's what he believes in, and everything comes from the heart.
Yeah.
Some of the things he's done is incredible. Like I went out to the school that he did out at Dramana and Woodley in Victoria, where they built the green roof. And it's hard to comprehend. I've also got a background in construction, but a dead flat roof that holds 6 inches of water, and that's part of the engineering design. And that's how they hold these, rooftop gardens, essentially, and grasses and everything that they're putting on.
Yeah.
It goes against all the principles of construction and how we'd normally do it, of course. Yeah, we're trying to get rid of the water, and we're definitely not making it dead flat. And
yeah. So, mate, where to for Lotus Energy? What's the plan?
Well, we've got the sites that we're developing offshore now. We want to expand into, like, quite literally every state, but we're realistic. We've got to manage. We've got to manage that process, and you can't do it overnight for these things. For us, like one of the, I guess, big strategies, which is more medium to longer term, is developing and manufacturing batteries in Australia from the recycled products. And that's something that we're working on right now.
Yeah.
And I would love to see Australia manufacturing semiconductors and silicon chips as well, and to somehow be a part of that. I don't expect we'll be making silicon chips, but I'd love to be the supplier of some of the commodities to produce it. And it's not something that we all sit back and ponder on maybe on a Friday arvo or something, having a beer or a wine. But the reason Taiwan is so important globally has nothing to do with it's just sitting off the coast of China or, and America and China have suddenly decided that, they're an important little country in the world. It's more to do with a company called Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation, which, for your listeners' knowledge, is the biggest company on earth. They're bigger than Google, they're bigger than Apple and Microsoft and all these giant corporations that are household names. These guys are the biggest silicon chip manufacturers in the world. And they are incredibly important because everything nowadays pretty much has a silicon chip in it. And if it's not already a IoT, AI sort of based device, someone's probably making one that is. So for national security reasons, for any country, controlling, critical minerals and some of these key core products to technology is really important. And Australia has every opportunity to bring it back on shore. We're no longer manufacturing things with, people sitting with a soldering iron and smoking a cigarette like the old images we saw of, the 80s and maybe early 90s of China. Everything today is like fully automated.
Yeah.
The picture that we've still got in our head is completely outdated. China currently has battery manufacturing plants that they call dark factories. And these things are incredible. And the reason they call them dark is there's no lights on in the building until a human walks in there because they're completely run by robots, including the repairs and maintenance. And it's just incredible.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely blows my mind the way that things are going, and it seems to be speeding up at a rapid pace now. But, mate, so just for our listeners, like what else does Lotus Energy do? Like what's we sort of got like it's actually been a really, really interesting and educating conversation. I've taken away a lot already, but we did jump forward quite a bit. Like, where's your passion? Like, what made you get to do what you do now?
Yeah, I love the renewables side of things. Like we, build big commercial industrial solar PV assets, and we were doing that under what they call a power purchase agreement. And I would say we were delivering the only power purchase agreement. So we'll put a big solar asset, let's say on a manufacturing plant or something, and they pay for the energy that they use, and that's it. They don't pay anything else, and they get cheaper energy. And so we were doing a lot of that, and we still do that. But, we were creating this waste. So we were part of the problem, of course. And I guess now the passion really sits in the recycling space. And, personally, I would love to see some industry standards where they force directors to make declarations around what recovery rates they're achieving or something like that, where we actually have to stand behind, the claims that we're making. But, for now, we just keep working on our innovation and, hopefully one day you'll see a Lotus battery out there, which is, a world-leading battery made in Australia.
Yeah.
And, that said, if we were, or not if, once we're up and running in Germany and India, we'd have the same intent, keep it local there as well.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's bloody awesome, man. Look, I definitely agree with what you just said. Like, I think the whole building industry needs a shake-up when it comes to sustainability and recycling. And I think, like, personally, owning a building business, I take it very seriously about the products we can salvage out of homes. And like, the building industry contributes so much waste to landfill, and yet we have all these housing affordability problems. We have shortage problems. Like there's like timber. There's a lot of problems with timber at the moment, like all those types of things. And yet we're demolishing timber that is the best timber in the world because it's been around 40, 50, 60, 70 years. And yet we just bring a machine in and munch it up and throw it back in the
old hardwoods and everything. And yeah,
across the board. Like there is so many things. And I actually think you raised a really good point about Aussies just wanting all the good looking flash stuff, because I talk about this a lot. Like everyone expects perfection. And so like we see it a lot in our buildings, like people buy the beautiful tapware or the light fittings, and like especially taps, like you buy a good quality tap these days and you open the cardboard box, and then inside the cardboard box it's inside a bag, and then inside the bag it's all molded foam, and then then the tap itself is inside another soft bag, and like the waste is unbelievable. And I get it, like no one wants to have a new tap in their home that's got a scratch on it, but I really do think we've gone too far. Like the waste that we produce is insane. And that's why, again, that's why I reached out to you and I wanted to know more about what you're doing, because I love seeing and talking to people that are passionate, and that, like you said yourself, like you were part of the problem. Like I believe that with my building business, like I'm part of the problem. Like I'm building homes that are producing lots of waste. So I need to come up with solutions to reduce that waste. And I just, again, I take my hat off to you, mate, for doing what you do.
Have you seen the Rhino recycling facility in Pinkenba? Is it?
Bar, yeah.
Yeah, mate. I actually caught up with those guys a few weeks ago. That facility up there is just incredible. They're doing 450 ton just on the construction waste piece. 450 ton per hour.
Holy dooly.
Yes.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. A guy told me about it a few months ago and said it's something you'd really need to check out. But apparently, is that the one that they've built to deal with a lot of the Olympic? Because there's going to be a lot of waste when they start doing the Olympic work in the Olympics.
I'm not sure about the reference to the Olympics. It wouldn't surprise me, because this thing is huge and it's dealing with, road waste, construction waste. It's mainly, construction related waste. And it's just incredible. It's unbelievably impressive, and it's great to see. Like, sometimes the best you can do is create a low value product coming back out, a cement or bitumen based, additive or something like that. And to me, anything's better than nothing. Whereas people are very quick to dismiss things of, they're only achieving X. Well, it's better than achieving nothing.
Yeah, and it's better. Well, and it's better than it going back in a hole in the ground.
Absolutely, because the other thing to that is, the alternative is we dig it up somewhere and we send it off, and it gets processed, and then it gets transported to where we want it delivered for, the construction. And if we're talking like cement based products, then there's a whole nother thing around the the carbon footprint and from the heating process of making the cement and everything. And so just reducing that is an awesome thing. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Mate, look, I really appreciate your time this afternoon. Thanks for jumping on. So where can our listeners find you? What's your best contact?
Probably easiest just going to our website, like lotusrecycling.com.au, or our phone number is 1300 0 Lotus. So pretty easy, hopefully. And look, we're happy to engage with people, and like we're in Melbourne, so it's not always practical for logistics, from all over the country, but we're really collaborative as well. So we're open to sharing ideas with people. People just want to come and visit and see how it all happens. We're very transparent, because me in particular, I've been very critical of some, let's call them bad actors out in the industry. So, it's only fair that we're transparent and open with, how it all works and what happens and where does it go, etc. So, it doesn't have to be that someone just wants to send us, some e-waste or cable or solar panels or whatever. We're open to anything, and we happily support community things as well.
Yeah, and go and check out your Instagram. You got a lot of good stuff on your Instagram. But just before we go, how does it actually work? Like, if someone brings a solar panel to you, I'm assuming there's a fee.
Yeah, there is. So at present, it's a flat fee of $12 per panel.
Yeah.
Gate fee. If they bring cable and mounting gear, we obviously credit them money back. So it typically offsets it anyhow, from the other scrap. Or if you like, I'll share with you just quickly the process. We've got a couple of different parts to the process. One's a thermal process that we use to get the solar cells out. Once those cells are out, that's when it goes into the laboratory, and that's a bit we've got heavily under wraps in terms of the IP, but essentially that's how we're getting the silicon and the nano-silicon and then the silver. The recycling plant itself, depending on the state of the solar panel, because they can come in all states, of course, but the brutal version is, so if they're like heavily damaged or something, that goes through a mechanical process. So it basically shreds them up, sends it down some conveyors, and there's some overbelt magnets to pull out any steel, any ferrous metal. And then it goes into a mill. Basically, it pulverizes it and makes it into small pieces down to like 5-10 mil sort of size. At that stage, the glass actually through that process becomes powder. And then it uses pneumatic air and gravity. And so it actually transports the material up to the roof and goes through a cyclone and zigzag, which is pretty common from the mining industry. And so the heavy material will fall out at that point, and that's where the aluminium falls out in almost like the old slug gun pellets, it looks like. And then there's air suction, and the air, like, it sucks away the glass and the plastic. And then because of the size differentiator, we can sieve them out and actually separate and have them all separated. Yeah,
and I'd love to, next time I'm down there, mate, I'm going to try and pop in and bloody see what you're doing there. But seriously,
mate,
like $12
more than welcome.
Seems pretty bloody reasonable to considering all the advantages of what you're doing.
I just find the whole thing exciting. It's look, and I'd love to have you visit. We're in the process of moving, so we'll have the new site up and running in 12 weeks. So you can come and see it sitting there dormant at the moment, unfortunately, because we're decommissioning. But at the new location, and with good reason, we're increasing our capacity. We're more than doubling our capacity to where we're going to.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
No,
and also improving the efficiency, of course. And we're doing some really cool stuff. We're putting in a NDIS workers line, so we're supporting our social impact and giving jobs for some disability workers, and adjusting our process to accommodate that. And I could quite easily automate it, but the reality is, sometimes it's, you do something and treat people how you'd like to be treated. And I've got a little cousin that was, mentally handicapped, and, I like to think that, he lives up in Queensland, but that someone up there would do the same thing for him.
Mate, that's bloody awesome. Like, honestly, it's been an incredible conversation. I really, I know the listeners would have got a lot out of it. I've definitely got a lot out of it. It's really intrigued my interest even more into solar panels. But mate, keep doing what you're doing. I love it. I love your passion. And look, for guys and girls that are listening, reach out to the guys at Lotus Energy on Instagram. Their page is great. You can check out everything they're doing there, and got some really good content on there. And look, as always, if you love the podcast, make sure you like, share, subscribe, all those types of things. Go to the DuaynePearce.com website if you want some merch. And look, depending on when this podcast comes out, if you can attend my event that we are having on Friday the 30th of May, I'd love to see you there. It's going to be the greatest event the construction industry's ever seen. If I had to know more about you, Anthony, I would have had you there so you could be talking about what you're doing. But as always, guys, look forward to seeing you on the next podcast. Take it easy. Hope you enjoyed.
Are you ready to build smarter, live better, and enjoy life? Then head over to livelifebuild.com/elevate to get started.
Everything discussed during the Level Up podcast with me, Duayne Pearce, is based solely on my own personal experiences and those experiences of my guests. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. We recommend that you obtain your own professional advice in respect to the topics discussed during this podcast.